Before we begin, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lummi, Nooksack, Samish, and Semiahmoo people who have cared for and tended this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We pay respect to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all events. This acknowledgement is something we're going to be talking about later on in our agenda. So I'd like to call the meeting to order, and our first agenda item is the year-end report. So Holly and Marty.
The year-end report draft, the latest draft was in your packet. The question is just a very short one. Did you see anything in there that you know needs to be edited before this goes in the IPRTF packet on Monday? And the
I've
idea is to approve it on Monday.
I've
Sorry.
given it all the review I'm going to be giving it, and I know that Scott Cortice weighed in and did some good detailed picking through it, and I'm not sure about the others, but I'm good to go.
Okay, if anybody has any last minute edits, please email them and we will get those made today and tomorrow. And then hopefully it's in shape for approval on the meeting at the 15th. Thank you.
How much
right.
feedback have you gotten?
Scott, and then we had to ask a couple of people specific questions just to make sure we had information correct and ran little paragraphs by them, and that was it.
Okay.
And you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Gary,
Yeah, go
do we
ahead.
want to go? Yeah, I'm just wondering, do we want to go back and look at the agenda? We kind of jumped in, but I feel like we could look at the agenda for a minute because you had an item. Feels like Peter had an item and we had an item.
I see mine was already added, so it's on the agenda. So Jill, can you bring that up real quick? So the meeting calendar one is the item that I was talking about. And
I
then,
need to
Okay.
give a report on the legislative work group.
yeah, so we just stick that under other business probably, right? Or do you want to go before, do you have any timing preference, Peter?
Nope, order is, it doesn't matter.
Okay. All right, we will go into the land acknowledgement statement. Heather had found some local tribal land acknowledgement statements, so I'm going to let her take this one. Heather?
I actually also wonder though, I wanted to make sure Rosa got a specific invite to a conversation, and I don't want to have a robust conversation without Rosa. She raised her hand at the task force meeting to join us, and I just was remiss in connecting the dots between today and that meeting. So I'd love to just share some things on my mind to start and then have a fuller conversation in the new year. And I'd love to just get your initial thoughts too about, I think like the easy thing quote would be to switch out this land acknowledgement. And I appreciate the edits, Jill, with adding the Coast Salish people. But I've been reflecting a lot on equity work in general. And then I shared with the IPRTF, I was given direct feedback about a land acknowledgement that wasn't great. And I want to model, learning and humility, and that this is a journey, and even society evolves. And what I really don't want is for it to become a rote performative statement that we say that we're not even really hearing the words. And I've been thinking about like either, do we actually need to do it at every meeting? I think that's worth asking. And what is the purpose of doing it? Reminding us in our culture is, what is the purpose? And actually, is it this statement? Because we always want to follow the leadership of the tribes. And or what are the actions though that accompany the statement? Because I think it's the actions and the work that really matter a lot more. And I think about how it's been really hard for us to have participation from Lummi Nation and Nooksack. And I think that's an us thing. It's not a them thing. It's like our culture, our like, why would we expect a sovereign nation to participate on a county task force? And so what's that government to government work? Um, and if we do change our statement, should we actually talk about how structural inequities, what that is in the work of incarceration prevention, and like name some of the harms specifically to the system that we're working in versus a land acknowledgement? And so those are some of the just vulnerable, honest, messy thoughts. I know we all care so much and want to get it right and want to continue to learn. And thanks for like giving me the opportunity to just bring it to our attention to say, like, is this still the right thing? Is there something that's more accurate for today? And I would love to hear any feedbacks or thoughts about, is this a conversation that we want to have in the new year together? So,
Okay. Thanks, Heather. Raylene? You're still muted, Raylene.
Thanks. Sorry about that. I clicked the button and it must not have clicked spot on. So thanks a lot, Heather. I appreciate your work on this. I do think the Coast Salish people has to be there and not just Lummi, because there was people from Semiahmoo, there was the Coast Salish, there's Nooksack, there's people from Canada that came down, and they still come down because there's not regulations for tribal people that go back and forth on the border there. So I think it's really important that we incorporate that. I asked the same question, I don't know, a couple of years ago maybe, about do we announce it at every meeting? And Sheriff Tanksley was very strong advocate to, yes, we should continue this. So I just want to make sure that that's in the back of my mind because it was brought up before. And then history of tribal participation. I mean, I think Barry Buchanan has probably been around with me for quite some time on this task force. And I can tell you from the time, at least in 2015 to currently, we have encouraged participation from the tribes. We did have members, I think Melanie Campos was the last representative that we had when she was, I think the captain of Lummi Law and Order, that we had somebody that was here. I got some feedback that she said that they welcomed the fact that she was allowed to be here, but everything had to go through council for her to say a whole lot, tribal council. So she had some concerns, but she was happy to be part of this, that we haven't really had anybody since then that spoke on here. We have had a lot of participation from the county on the missing and murdered Indigenous women's portion of it. I have now participated in the Tribal Summit as a representative for the State County Clerks Association. And that was the first of its kind in the summer to bring courts together with the tribes. I can't remember the exact House bill that went into effect this summer, but it was to allow full faith and credit for warrants for tribes because people were literally getting away with murder. In that respect is if somebody committed a murder and it happened on a reservation and there was a warrant issued, it was only going into the tribal courts and it wasn't being put into the county or the Superior Court system for entry into WASC and CIC, which is law enforcement databases. So an individual would only be arrested if they were back on the reservation. And then there was jurisdictional issues there. So they did talk about some of the jurisdictional issues at the last tribal summit, and maybe that's something that we want to bring forth to maybe even our legal and justice subcommittee or the task force as a whole, is some of the barriers that we have. But I do want to say that I think there has been some movement forward, because we do full faith and credit for protection orders, and that has been in effect for a long time. So if you got a protection order or a warrant now, and it was done in the tribe and they submit it to the Superior Court in Whatcom County, then we enter it into our databases here, and then it goes to law enforcement. So there is a statewide jurisdiction coverage there. So I think we're trying to work together, but it is also a sovereign nation. And they have their own rules and regulations. And so there's some sensitivity that we have to be mindful of. So those are my 2 cents, but thanks, Heather.
So we went through this exercise with the North Sound Behavioral Health ASO a couple years ago. And we reached out to the Swinomish tribe and other local tribes in the area. And they immediately asked the same question that Heather asked, and that is, what's your objective in wanting to do this? And the objective we came up, we were a little surprised at that question, but we said it was just to respect the land that once belonged and la la la, right? That and it was okay, but it was kind of an odd conversation. It was kind of like you felt like you were appropriating something in a way. I don't know. But I think that's an important question is what do we want to, what's our objective? And I think our objective is what Heather said, is to be able to do the work that fulfills a lot of those promises rather than just, a blatant statement or no, I mean, any kind of statement that just, I don't know. I'm either way on this, whether we do it or not, and whether we change it or not. I'm kind of want to know what the group thinks. So.
I'll say a few things. I really don't like performative statements that become rote, and this has always concerned me that this is one of those things. However, I, as you may have noticed, once I became a co-chair, every once in a while I will tell a short story or something related to things that have been happening or experiences I've had with our Coast Salish compatriots here. I don't like performative statements that are not backed up with action. And gosh, I do believe that we are trying in a whole host of ways. One of the things, I think it's in the new statement, one of the things I really like is the unceded territory. Unceded, what is the language,
Yeah,
Heather, do you have it in
got it.
front of you?
Unseated, yeah.
Yeah. I, to the degree that that is one of their key things that they the tribes want us to know, I want that to be said. It's very important that we remember that it is unceded.
Yeah.
It puts us in a position, us, I'm talking uh, the rest of us here, to make um, to never forget that. I don't have much more to say. I'm about action, not just rote statements. But gosh, if we can back it up with action, that's what I'm interested in.
Dan.
Yeah, thanks, Peter, Heather, and Raylene for the comments. This matters. Words matter. I was the first city council president to do a land acknowledgement statement, probably back in I think 2018, 2017, somewhere in there. And I tried to include the words unceded territory, and the administration did not like that at all, and thus it was removed. But then it was re-included later, and I think that those words are important. And I do think I 100% back the idea of we need to have some action as well as the words. and what that action looks like. One example, we've got the Swinomish tribe has set up their second mobile medical unit in downtown Bellingham. And next week I'll be going out with their outreach team to walk the alleys and hand out Narcan kits and outreach cards and things like that. I think that that's action that that's one example that can be taken to work with the tribes on the work that they're doing, recognizing fully the generosity of that tribe coming to Bellingham in a county that they're from Skagit area, recognizing fully that generosity. But how else can we work with our local tribal partners and just be better partners? So I agree. There's kind of like there's two sides, or it's more than two sides, but the way that I see it is, this land acknowledgement statement is important, but I don't want people to just look at their keyboard and like do other work while that's being read. That to me is not that's not okay. I mean,
Right.
we say these words for a reason, and so I want people to be engaged fully and see if we can, if we as individuals and representatives are of our respective organizations and agencies and governments to be able to back it with action. I agree with Peter 100% on that part of it. Thanks.
Holly.
Yeah, I think I appreciate what you're saying, Dan, about what are the ways in which the IPRTF and its committees are incorporating and really being conscious of at the level of services and programs that we are incorporating and thinking about the tribes. But the way I read this statement, to me, it has meaning in this way, and it does feel like an action, and it feels like you could dial up what it means. So, for example, if you look at it, it's talking about, please join us in uncovering. So, for example, when we're in the J-pop meeting and somebody speaks up about an issue, right, related to what's happening with the tribes, and they are taking the risk to do that. I think what the statement does is it says, we want you to take that risk. We want all of us to be willing to take the risk. So it's almost like a process thing, almost like a guideline for participation, right? Or a ground rule. You like, if it's on if you feel like it's in the room, you should take that risk. So it guides that, and you could reinforce that and model that. Like, here's what it looks like to take that risk. Oh, you're taking that risk. Yay. So there's that. And then I think the other thing it's asking us to do is take a moment of silence. So when we take the moment of silence, if we're not just looking at our computer screen, even that, it's like it's like how do you focus people's attention on that? Like you could have a conversation about that. I can think of the map of the tribal nations. I can think of the thinking about the history, the fact that we are here together, like I can actually focus on that for my moment of silence. But if people are not focusing, then it does become performative. So I guess my point is the words actually do, in my mind, have meaning, but they only have meaning if we are in some way reinforcing what that actually would look like in practice. So that we could, in the same way that we've been working this whole last year on. So we say we do policy at the IPRTF. So how's that actually work? Like we can do these things, but we have to reinforce what they look like and feel like in the practice of doing them. Thank you.
Anybody else? So Heather, it sounds like you want to get Rose obviously in on this conversation and bring this back in the new year, you said.
Yeah, I want to, and I see Peter, you have your hand up too, and
Oh, I
then maybe
can't
I'll
see
say,
his hand. It's up. Go
oh,
ahead, Peter. It's up in a invisible part of my screen.
I'm interested in what Heather was about to say. I'm interested in where we take this process. I
yeah.
just wanted to throw out an insane idea. I don't want to make this embarrassing or anything, but just basically in practice, when you want something to, like, we stand for I'm going to the Planning Commission meeting tonight, the Whatcom County Planning Commission. One of the things they do that is different than all the other meetings I go to is it's a Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody stands and faces the flag, puts their hand on their heart. I'm I, I don't necessarily want to suggest this, but people could do something different, like stand up when we read the uh, acknowledgement. I that too could become performative. Anything can become performative when you do it over and over again. But I'm just saying uh, that there are techniques that we humans use to uh, make something beyond just words. So I just wanted to say that. The other thing I want to focus on is that um, we hear that, and we can see in the data that we have a overrepresentation of uh, of Native Americans in our jail, and I know that there are all sorts of process reasons for that, and it is not necessarily um, well. What I want to say is, I think we need a full discussion about this regularly, like once a year, and so we can address this issue, whether it's systemic racism, whether it is the way policing is done um, on the Lummi reservation, whether it is, whatever it might be. So that would be some action I think that would be responsible for us to take once a year.
Yeah. Um, great. Marty, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I could just say that I think the statement for me is an intention that for action, it's setting an intention at this meeting, we're going to keep this in mind. And as we move out of this meeting, we're going to keep these things in mind. And that in itself is worth saying each time, like just to like get everybody's heads in the game as you move into the meeting. So I think it's good.
Mm-hmm.
And
Verdi,
yeah,
anything you?
Peter, I just wrote down this idea to talk about the racial disproportionalities in jail at least once a year, and we'll get that into the calendar. That's great. It's also another way to involve the Whatcom Racial Equity Commission, and it's very much in the whole implementation plan and IPRTF's responsibilities to be working very closely on these kind of issues. So with REC and others. So it's a great idea.
Verdi, did you have anything you want to add? You're muted.
Yeah, no, I've been listening carefully, and I think I agree that it becomes very rote, and I think this is a good discussion to ask what is it about it, and maybe we do it, but we also add, so are there issues affecting this committee or this subcommittee that we can look at that um, represent some of the ways in which we forget this legacy and we simply roll over it. And I'm just thinking, I have the index committee today, and maybe I say, so what data do we have and how do we address it? And kind of try to raise issues in people's mind a little more than reading a statement, because
Mm-hmm.
even the best of us, when we listen to the same thing over and over again, aren't always good at being mindful and focusing on it. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Thanks, Verdi. Ryan, I know you're off camera, but if you have any thoughts to add, I'd love to hear. And you can come back around if you're not able to come back online. I I don't want to necessarily belabor the statement itself, and so I'm thinking about, is the conversation actually not so much whether or not we do a statement, because I'm hearing a lot of support for doing that. I agree, words matter. But maybe the conversation is, how are we living these values, and what are the actions and goals we want to formalize around the like what comes after the statement, and capture what is already being done. Dan, I understand and know that there's a lot of work already being done, but let's name it and capture it and build on it. I did some just research around, like, well, where did land acknowledgements come from and when did they start? And I want to, if you're curious, I'd love to share just briefly some of the background, and then maybe that can plant some seeds for January or February, picking it back up. Do you want to hear some of the things I found out?
Yeah.
Dan, go ahead.
Yes, I do. And I've got a statement after when you're done.
Oh, you can make your statement.
Well, I just think that we have an opportunity here to tie in this land acknowledgement to the work that we do
Yeah.
in a very unique way. What I've come to recognize is that these land acknowledgement statements tend to be kind of similar from governmental body to us, and that's okay. That's not bad. But I think that if we could tie this in to the work, I think that like make a commitment,
Yeah.
that would be more powerful, and define what that is, name it like you're saying. So that I just wanted to say that real quick.
Thanks, Dan.
That's powerful, Dan. I like that.
Thanks.
So where did land acknowledgements come from? Indigenous protocols long before institutions. Indigenous peoples around the world have always had practices of recognizing whose land they were on when visiting or gathering. This is not new. What's new is non-native institutions adopting the idea. Then they were formalized first in Canada, at least according to this source. Universities, arts organizations, and governments in Canada began using land acknowledgements more widely in the early 2000s, especially as awareness of residential school harm grew. And then in 2015, the practice spread after the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission called for public education and acknowledgement of ongoing colonial impacts. After that, land acknowledgements became common at events. And then they entered US mainstream in the late 2010s. So museums, nonprofits, and campuses began adopting them, often without clear guidance, which is where a lot of the current tension comes from. So why do people do them? At their best, land acknowledgements aim to name historical truth, that dispossession wasn't accidental, recognize that tribes still exist today, begin relationship building, not replace it, shift power, not just sentiment, and educate audiences who may know nothing about local Indigenous nations. They were never meant to be a performance, an apology, a check the box statement, or the end of the work. They're supposed to be the beginning, not the point. There's no single Indigenous opinion about whether you should or should not do them. Some tribes appreciate the land acknowledgements when they are accurate, consented to, co-created, and paired with action. Action meaning partnership, funding, policy change, land access, hiring, etc. And for many nations, a thoughtful acknowledgement can feel like finally people are learning the real history. And some tribes will dislike or reject them when they are performative. You say this, then nothing changes. Generic or inaccurate, if we use the wrong tribe names or wrong territory. If they're extractive, where institutions are getting virtue points without reciprocity, or emotionally burdensome, where they're reopening trauma without commitment. So that was interesting history. And so what actually matters, ask, don't assume. Different nations have different preferences. Some tribes have issued guidance, and we're looking to the Loktamish for this revised statement potentially. Other tribes prefer no public statement at all without consultation. Be specific and correct. Use correct tribal names, correct treaty history, correct language that recognizes tribes as present, not past. And avoid, we honor the original stewards without naming who, avoid centering the institution's feelings, and pair words with commitments. Examples that do matter, things like compensated partnership, not advice for free, funding native-led programs, land access or co-stewardship, hiring and representation, supporting treaty reserved rights, and policy advocacy requested by tribes. And then when it comes to government, it's saying it's a little more sensitive in government settings because for tribes, a land acknowledgement from government is not symbolic. It sits inside a history of broken treaties, of forced removal and policing of Native people, and of carceral systems that still disproportionately impact tribes. So words from government mean nothing without policy change. And then we go into some best practices and what not to do. But we can talk more about all of that when we get into a discussion in the new year. And I just thought that was helpful background to think about where is this coming from and what are they, intended to be. And that's what has been making me think, well, I wonder if we actually want to name some of the institutional harms of the criminal justice system. And then I love, Dan, what you said about let's pair it with some really clear actions or goals and formalize that. So thanks for opening the conversation and maybe Barry or anyone who wants to, we could think about how to set it up for a really successful public conversation in the new year.
Yeah, sure. Welcome, Sat Paul. I just wanted to get you up to speed. We're talking about the land acknowledgement that the IPTRF does at the beginning of the meetings. And we're just talking about kind of the, what else is available. Heather came across some language that's more local. And we're just talking about kind of the history. That was what Heather just did, the history of kind of land acknowledgement throughout time. And it was pretty interesting, actually. Yeah. So that's what we were talking about. Anyway, next item is the meeting calendar. So a couple months ago, we talked about the need for our staff to have a little bit more flexibility to do other work in our office. And one of the thoughts was to be able to potentially pare down the subcommittee meetings to once every 2 months rather than monthly. I know Jill is trying to put together the calendar, and she told me she doesn't have a preference either way. So if we decide to stay with, monthly, that's fine with her. And if we go to the bi-monthly, it's fine with her. I'm not misquoting you, am I, Jill?
Nope, you're absolutely correct.
Okay,
Thank you.
good. I wanted to make sure I got that right. So kind of it's up to us and what we want to do. And what I'd like to see is us have a recommendation, something to put before the task force before the end of the year and make our mind up and have a calendar published. So that's kind of the objective. So what do people think about, or have you had time to think about the schedule and what every 2 months might be compared to our current every month? And I think we decided early on that steering would probably still meet monthly, was my recollection of some of the earlier conversations. So Marty?
Yeah, and J-pop will still meet
J-pop, yeah,
monthly.
yeah, on J-pop.
That's all.
Jill? Oh, and then Peter. Go ahead, Peter.
Oh, I just need a little clarity. I thought that we were having to go to every other month because of staff resources. But what I'm hearing is that Jill doesn't necessarily have a preference. So could we get a little bit of clarity around that?
Well, she's got her hand up, so maybe Jill can give us a picture of the office and maybe why that. Go ahead, Jill.
Yeah, I don't know if I can answer your question directly, Peter. I know that there was discussion amongst council members about the amount of staff time the IPRTF receives compared to other counties' advisory groups. And that was a discussion point during budget hearings, and there was a desire to see if we could be as efficient as possible. So that's what started this. Um, and I really don't have any additional background on that for you, but maybe Barry can expand on that. My only comment was just to say that really the schedule change only impacts legal and justice and behavioral health committees. And members of the legal and justice committee have talked about going every other month, although I don't think there's been an official vote on that. So just to clarify, it's really those two committees that are most impacted.
Well, I know one thing that's kind of changed with the councils. We had that potential amendment to the budget that would have eliminated funding for J-pop facilitation for next year. And so I did a bunch of work behind the scenes with legal, found out that the IPTRF is mandated funding for facilitation by ordinance way back in the day. So the council kind of came to grips with that. We had a conversation about how important the work is on J-pop. So there was a lot of kind of re-understanding of the task force work, I think, and some of the newer council members, I think, uh, got a benefit of that conversation. So the council isn't as, and plus, like Jill says, it's only two committees a year. We're not going to save a ton of money. So it kind of became more of a decision point that's up to us rather than something that we need to do budget wise. Does that answer your question, Peter? Okay, Dan?
Maybe maybe let Raylene go first. You know, the legal injustice just got brought up, and maybe if she's ready to go.
Yeah, Raylene?
Thank you. I know like some of the committees, they have volunteers that aren't necessarily county employees, but the legal and justice subcommittee does have a lot of individuals that do work for the county. And talking to Stephanie, who's in administration for Superior Court, we see a lot of overlap in some of the committees that we're on. And streamlining some of the information, like there's the subcommittee that has reentry stuff that is applicable sometimes to behavioral health as well as legal and justice. And my take from the last time it was brought up in the legal and justice is that people in that committee were more on board to go bi-monthly, but there wasn't an official vote on that. We can always add an extra one later on down the road if we need to, but I think having those specialized subcommittees on topics and then being brought back up on the work that's been done on those on joint meetings would most likely be a better use of county employees' times to make sure that we're not rehashing the same subjects over and over in just different committees, but making sure that everybody has the information that was gathered from these subcommittees at combined meetings down the road.
Thanks, Raylene. Dan?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think through like the logistics of how this would work. So if we went by monthly for behavioral health, for example, we have joint meetings with legal and justice 4 times a year. And so if we went to 6 total every other month, the majority of those meetings would be these joint meetings, which is fine. I think that's actually good, but I just want to, make that very clear. And then the majority of the group that I co-chair are not county employees. They are spread across multiple institutions like Western and Whatcom Community College and Bellingham Police and many others. So I just want to be cognizant of what we're asking for the members. We did a lot of work on recruitment to get we were losing people just because of people would switch jobs or what have you. And then we built that back up. And I just want to make sure that the quality of the meetings is high. And I can be just very honest and forthright here that it is hard to build agendas every month. It just takes, a fair amount of time. And then just with council work and then being on this committee and then being on the overall task force, it's not clear to the council, my council that I serve on, how many different committees that being on this task force actually represents. So I would be in favor um, of going to every other month. I think that might bring the quality up a little bit. And then just keep in mind that we've got these work groups as well that are working in between the actual subcommittee meetings. And so it's not like the work is on hold necessarily. There are opportunities to engage in this body of work for behavioral health in a variety of different ways. So I just want to make the group aware of that perspective. So thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Brian?
Um, I apologize. I'm driving right now from Seattle back to Bellingham. I'm supportive of meeting every other month, and also kind of picking up on what Dan said about the frequency of the joint meetings with Law and Justice. Perhaps we could modify that. Maybe we would meet jointly twice a year. So behavioral health could have 2 extra meetings focused solely on committees. So I'll just throw that out.
Jill?
So I'm thinking for the chairs and co-chairs of both committees that this should be an agenda item for the joint meeting in a couple of weeks. And I'm happy to schedule that on the agenda, and you can discuss possible scenarios for, whether you want to do 2, 3, or 4 joint meetings a year, or what your individual committee schedules will look like. Is that correct then, to schedule this on the December 16th joint committee?
So that's a day after the task force meeting, right?
Correct.
Dan?
Yeah, I mean, my preference would be for the members to decide what they want to
Yeah.
do versus the co. I mean, we can chime in. We're chiming in right now, but I think it's up to the members really based on their, professional obligations and yeah. So, and I do agree with Brian that we can modify the joint meeting schedule to a different number. I don't know if it's 2 or 3 or whatever the number is. We can modify that. I was just pointing out that currently it's 4. And I think we've had that for maybe 2 years, somewhere in there. So it'd be a little bit of a shift, but I don't think it's a huge deal to lower it to 2. Or if there's a need for a special meeting, a special joint meeting, we can make that happen. It's our prerogative to do that.
Dan, are those meetings the same length as your regular subcommittee meetings?
Yeah, I mean, Raylene and Brian can chime in on that too, but yeah, I mean they're about the same length. They go over a little bit sometimes.
But I mean, they're scheduled for the same length, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm thinking if we just had the staff do plug in 6 meetings a year, and then you can decide how those are allocated between joint and single committee meetings, it wouldn't make any difference to our staff. We would just know we have 6 meetings to staff.
Sure. That sounds good. I guess one of my other concerns is the integration between those subcommittees and um J-pop goals and opportunities and making sure that we're aligned and when things are coming up that we're able to be a little more nimble than government usually can do. So, like BCC recommendations for comes to mind, for example, location, co-location, that kind of thing. Like, how can we make sure that when that recommendation came forward, that we are in a position where we can put our stamp of approval or question marks or whatever the committee is wanting to do. So I just want to be um, I agree, Barry, that that structure needs to be in place for the staff so that they can anticipate, 6 meetings a year, and we might have a little bit of adjustment on timing of maybe 1 or 2 of those meetings. Um, and or make, you know, 2 or 3 of them the joint meetings. So I agree.
Jill, does that work? Do you have enough information to plug something in for maybe the committee members to talk about? And
Yes,
do you have
yes.
absolute deadlines when you need to have this
I
decided?
Thank you. Yes, that works for me. I really just need some guidance on, so I can start building calendars out, sending out Outlook invitations for everyone for their January meetings, getting dates up on the website. And of course, all of you, all of the committees can call special meetings if needed, Dan, if something comes up. But really, I just need to get some dates out there for the public and for the members. So this is very helpful. And I liked your suggestion, Barry, that the joint committees can talk about how often they want to meet next year at that December meeting. So if everybody's fine with that, I'm good.
Any other ideas around that? Marty? Muted.
Sorry. Just want to piggyback on what Dan said about work groups. If the work groups, currently the work groups have members from both legal and justice and behavioral health and some index too, and that's so great. And so if that is the place, if work group meetings are the place where a lot of work gets done, the committee meetings are the place where the work groups would be reporting back on where they are and getting feedback and making decisions, right? As the overarching body about what's going to come forward to the IPRTF. So it seems like planning out the work group meetings in in conjunction with these committee meetings is important, so that that information flows well and in a timely way.
Yeah, that's a good point, Marty. Everything's got to line up, not just with the work groups, but the steering and main task force and all that stuff has to align J-pop in order for that information to get through the system in the right order. So you're absolutely right. Anything else on schedule? Jill?
I'm wondering if Raylene, Dan, and Brian would want to think about having standing agenda items for either their committees or the joint meetings for report outs from these work groups. And then at the December meeting, maybe all the members can talk about other work groups and groups that are meeting that overlap with the work that the Legal and Justice Committee or the Behavioral Health Committee is doing, so we can really target some groups who we would like to hear from to report out at these meetings.
Okay, Dan?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great idea. To build agendas around those report outs. And to Marty's point, yes, those are report outs. And I think you started to say this, Marty, about you know, then we determine action items based on those reports, right? So we and the action items are, in my opinion, often recommendations from the broader subcommittee, so behavioral health, based on the data folks coming forward and saying, you know, we need to have a data wrangler to help us with moving forward and understanding, you know, incarceration rates and who's being incarcerated, that kind of thing. um, I think that's a recommendation that we can and should use. What we're doing is, if we do that route, we're using the system that we currently have in place, which is work groups to the subcommittee, to steering, to the broader task force, and then ultimately to the council, the county council, for recommendations that they're funding priorities or policy priorities that need to go into law. So I want to use that system that we've built here over the years, and I think that'd be the best use. So yes, standing committee or work group reports would be a mechanism to do that.
Brian?
I agree with Dan, the standing committee reports. I was just also thinking that at our next joint meeting, we could talk about kind of our action plans for 2026. What programs or policies are we thinking of diving into, maybe to avoid overlap between law, justice, and behavioral health. And it's just throwing it out there, and the chairs and committees can discuss that in more detail in our next meeting in December. Thanks.
Thanks, Brian. Peter?
Just wanted to make a minor point following up on what Dan said. I just want to point out that we also have work groups that report directly to the IPRTF main body and not to a committee, such as the BCC work group and the legislative priorities work group. And so they're a little bit different. So not a big point, but just wanted to make everybody aware of that.
No, that's a good observation.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the three work groups under those two committees right now. Yeah.
All right. Anything else on schedule? Jill?
I just wanted to check in with you all about the steering committee's 2026 schedule. And this year we've alternated Wednesday and Thursday meetings to work around another meeting Barry has every month. Is that still working for you all? Is that something you just want to continue to carry over in 2026? I'm not hearing any challenges.
I'm
So
seeing any no's. I see a thumbs up by Peter and thumbs up by Dan. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone.
All right. We'll move on then to the Justice Project Implementation Plan. I'd like to kind of start out with just spend a couple minutes and hear some thoughts, what you thought, those that attended the community event in Ferndale, and hear what you thought. I know Peter was there, Holly and Marty were there, that Paul was there, Bertie was there. So, Peter, go ahead, kick us off.
Sure. Gosh, a lot of planning went into it. I think that that really set us up for success and for the success of the next two. I think we ended up over planning a little bit, and now we know what it is that we need to really focus in on. I had so much fun. It was just great. I got absolutely blasted from two different sides from the community. And then most of the folks, though, were just curious and had questions and had so many good conversation. My throat was a little sore afterwards. Did so much listening and talking, and it was fantastic. Various groups really put a lot of effort into getting out to lobby or make points to us. Particularly, I think the Peace and Justice Center and the more abolitionist folks in the community, and they're in force. There were a lot of really great questions from people that I really appreciated. I think that we got a lot of good information out. We heard a lot of information in, and there was, I don't know what was going on at the site behavioral health or behavioral care center and jail booths because I was at the FAQ booth. But from what I heard, they got a lot of good questions and a lot of good comments and such. So I'm really pleased and look forward to 2 and 3.
Yeah, my role was to be like a roamer, so I roamed, and I did a lap around every station, and it took almost an hour. It took like 57 minutes to go around the room once because of all the people that just stopped me asking questions. And I agree, Peter, there was abolitionists, there was people that were incarcerarists and everything in between. And I felt that people were really anxious for information, but not over anxious. I was pleased with the tone overall of the room, and I can't say enough about Riley Sweeney. He just really knocked this thing out of the park. And Sapal, you should be very proud of that young man. Birdie.
Yeah, my question is when I was there, I talked with Riley briefly about what was going to happen. There was a lot of verbal, excellent conversations going on at the various stations, and he said that the feedback that would be summarized would be from the written feedback people handed in at the end of the town hall. So I would love to see a summary of that. I would encourage us to send it to everybody on the task force. Obviously, it's distilled and more narrow than some of the really amazing conversations that were going on, but still, what people took the time to write down as their feedback and questions, I think it's important to really look at. And so I would love to see that summarized and sent out before, if possible, before our meeting on the 15th of the IPRTF.
Well, I know we're having a wrap up kind of a meeting, I think next week on the 10th, I believe, if my calendars are right. Sometime next week. And I'm hoping it's before the task force meeting, so I think it is.
Yeah. So who is that a separate planning meeting that's having?
That's to all the people that planned
Yeah.
event one. We're just going to kind of recap
Right.
it.
Right. Well, it would be nice if you have kind of a summary to share it with the task force, even though the whole series isn't done, because it can get us thinking about the types of feedback we heard. And I just think,
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. Yeah. What's up, Paul?
Uh, Good morning, everybody. Sorry for being a little late. I just want to make a comment on the format. I think it was a good format because some of the people were expecting that there will be somebody standing up there or 4 or 5 people standing up there and people will shoot questions and there will be a back and forth and everything. I think that model is not applicable in all the situations. This jail project is so varied and so many aspects of it. What happens that 1 or 2 topics usurp all the time, or people go back and forth and insisting on their personal perspective. So I think the format worked really good. We still had a lot of questions from people, but people were not dominating their own little thing and maybe with few people and then they move on. And I think I just want to say that let's keep that format and maybe increase booths or maybe increase number of people on the booths if there's more attendance. I think that was the successful part of this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree, Paul. Brian.
I really appreciated the format, and also just a shout out to some of the Caleb Erickson was there. I think it was Hannah Fisk, if I'm correct on the behavioral health component. I mean, I spent a fair amount of time in both those stations, and there was some very, very good discussions going on. And I was just, my final point was just, I'm looking forward to seeing the results of this. And I'm wondering if they're going to tally up the pebbles we put in the jars for, behavioral health priority versus, and then also on the size of the jail. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Peter.
Just one more thing. I think that next time we can do without setting up all the chairs, and we can just take the microphone, those of us keeping our introductory remarks. We did, I think, a good job of keeping them really short, and we can just do that from the center of the room or the side of the room instead of having the expectation is that there will be people speaking from the podium, because there was some surprise when we ended that so shortly and got everybody out to the booths. So that's just one little change I would make next time.
Long as we have some seating for people, because I did notice people did want to sit down kind of midway through. So as long as we accommodate that. Holly? You're muted.
we did.
Did you guys have or I guess I'll just ask, what is your system for sort of gathering what you heard in those breakouts? Did people take notes? Like, what's in terms of the input that was gathered in those stations? Did you have what should we expect from that?
I think that's the idea of this get together next week, is to come up with a plan for that. So
I, I can add that there was no formal note taking because it was not assigned that way. I think next time we can do that, and we can even leave a notepad there for people to write their suggestions or whatever they want to do. And I think that that part was a little bit less planned, and but people I think have noted down individually what questions were asked and what kind of discussion was happening. We'll have summary of that, but next time we should have a little formal way of either recording or if not recording, at least making notes on what kind of questions and what kind of answers were given. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love the quality of the conversations. I mean, that informal mode seemed really successful. So, yeah.
you
And
know what I'm thinking is we can ask the principals that were at the various booths to give some sort of a report,
yeah,
what they encountered, even if it's anecdotal.
yeah, that works.
Birdie.
Just a couple of added thoughts. One is in terms of the chairs, I agree about getting them out of the middle. It might be useful to have more around the tables informally because a lot of people looked uncomfortable standing, listening to the conversations and waiting to have their turn to ask a question. So that would set a different expectation. Perhaps. And my other comment was when I found out from Riley that the way they were gathering information was to have people fill out the final, there was a piece of paper that they were to write down feedback or questions. I made a point of going to everybody I saw as they were getting ready to leave and saying, did you know there's a piece of paper and we really want you to write your questions down and do this? And I think most people that I approached were somewhat unaware of that. And so I got them the papers and handed it to them, and most of them took the time to fill it out. But if that's one of our major ways of collecting feedback from this, I think it would help if we're more deliberate about that and perhaps hand it out when they first come in with pretty clear instructions that this is how we're going to gather the majority of the feedback.
Good
That's my
idea.
2 cents.
Brian?
I was just curious. I was talking to a reporter from the Cascadia Daily News when I was getting ready to leave, and they observed that they didn't see anybody from the prosecutor's office there. And so, I mean, the criminal justice system has a lot of moving parts, and this is focusing on building a new facility. But I'm sort of wonder, would there be any benefit to having somebody from the prosecutors or even like Superior Court there? Just in terms of educating people on all the different, moving parts that go into the criminal legal justice system. So I just throw it out there.
Yeah, that's a good point. You are breaking up a little bit, Brian, but I think we heard most of what you said. Marty?
I would be happy to volunteer to be a note taker at a station at these next couple. And I'm just thinking there's probably other people involved, either with IPRTF or committees who might want to do that too. And maybe I don't know how many stations there are, maybe 5 people, if we just sit there and record what questions are asked, topics, we could capture some of that.
Pasha?
I'd like to raise the tech level, and it would be great if at each station you just had a QR code that you could scan onto your phone, and there's a quick 5-question survey for each station, or an opportunity to type out thoughts. So before they leave the station, they're like, hey, I was at the jail station and this is what I learned, whatever. I think it's, come up with a set of questions for the information we're trying to get specifically, and just have little surveys at each station. Because then I think if it's done right after they leave that station, then it's relevant, it's fresh in their mind. So I think that would be a very helpful one.
Brian. Okay, he put his hand down.
I forgot to lower my hand. Sorry.
Ah, gotcha. Well, yeah, I think it was a wonderful first outing for this effort, and I think we will have learned a lot. Excellent points brought up here today that we will be able to build on, I think. Anything else on the event or anything else on the implementation plan anybody wants to bring up?
Since you bring up the implementation plan, definitely want to do what you have been talking about, Barry, and we need to start planning for an update.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan?
Yeah, so let's see. Are you talking about item 5 here? The plan there's a link in here in the agenda.
Yeah, I think it's a standing agenda item, and that's just probably a link to the plan itself, I'm guessing. Is that right, Jill?
It is a link to the implementation plan.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I noticed right away is that um hold on, let me try to pull it up real quick. All right, here it is. So this has got to be updated. I mean, we've got people um in here that are no longer associated. Like we've got like Bill Alfo, Seth Fleetwood. There's a bunch of other ones. I don't want to go through the whole list, but they're no longer a part of this process. And so I just wanted to make sure that we update this and make sure that that current people are being acknowledged and recognized, and that the ones that are no longer associated, that they are not in the list.
Yeah, and
Sorry,
that's what Peter was talking about. We want to have a very deliberate public process next year to update the plan.
Okay.
Not only that kind of information, but if there's whatever has changed over or what has progressed, we want to acknowledge that in the update. So,
Okay, fair enough.
anything else on the plan? All right, we'll move to the next IPTRF agendas. We have like a zillion items here, Jill.
Yes, would you like me to, let me screen share this so you can all take a look at it. One thing, it sounds like I should include the land acknowledgement statement on this list. Can you all see this?
Yeah, Heather, would you be comfortable bringing this up at the task force meeting in December, or do you want to wait until the new
Let's
year?
just wait. I mean, if it could be a one sentence, we started the conversation and talked about having another conversation in the new year.
That might be a good idea, just to get it on people's big picture radar anyway.
Okay.
So Barry, you'll just report out on that for the steering committee report.
Yeah, and I'll just ask Heather to say a couple words, and that'll be it. It'll be a short report.
Okay. And at the top of the item, or the top of the agenda, is Judge Johnson from, is it Walla Walla County? Raylene's gone. She had an appointment. He has to be in court at 9:30, so we need to start the meeting on time. And Peter volunteered to actually delay the land acknowledgement statement, so we can get Judge Johnson to do his presentation right at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay.
And that's why I raised my hand. I just wanted to make sure everybody's okay with delaying the land acknowledgement, and we really need to. Is there any reason we can't do it halfway through the meeting? Everybody okay with that?
Just don't use the phrase before we begin.
Ah, okay, that's fair enough.
Otherwise, you're good to go. As far as I'm.
All right.
All right. Anything on these items or others that people want to see on future agendas? I'll put it that way because there's a lot here. So,
Yeah, I've got a few things I'd like to chat with everybody about. One is there's a missing item here, and that is a report out from the Legislative Priorities Work Group, which consists of Scott Cortice, Riley Sweeney, Dan Hamill, Brian Estes, and myself. And we have met 3 times, I believe, and uh, we've taken into consideration a whole host of prior potential legislative priorities, and we have honed it down to 2 for this session and 1 for the 2027 session. And so, if we could add that to the agenda, I would like to make a recommendation, do a short presentation, um, and then make a recommendation for adoption. And then what I still need to do is in the next week, is that Paul still here with us? Is that Paul? I need to meet with Jed or whomever it is in your office that would be leading the legislative agenda effort, just to make sure that our recommendations are not conflicting in any way with priorities with the executive's office. So just need to take some time next week to do that so
Sure,
I can have a good presentation.
no problem. Welcome.
Right. I'll just reach out directly to Jed. Is Jed the right person to talk to? Okay, great. Well, since I have the floor, maybe I'll just continue talking about the framework around definition of recidivism. I've been doing a fair amount of work on this on this topic. I'm one of the core items that we really need to for our data project to be viable is to have a IPRTF agreed upon definition of recidivism. And I have a 3-pillar, after a whole bunch of research, a 3-pillar recidivism framework that I would like to do something of a presentation on. I am no expert, my friends, but I am willing to take a stab at it and get a conversation going, as you know. So I there's so many smart people in the room around the table, all coming from different perspectives. I would like to make a short, maybe 10-minute at the most, presentation on what I've come up with, and then get the conversational ball rolling, if that all sounds good to you. And I'm also happy to circulate it beforehand and get anybody's input on it before the meeting. Thoughts?
So, Peter, you talking about for next meeting or in a future meeting,
I'm talking about the next meeting.
a December meeting?
December meeting, yeah, I'm prepared to do that. I don't, obviously we have to make sure that we have enough time to do so, but I do feel it is a pressing issue.
Jill, how does that fit into your kind of understanding of the agenda for this month? I should say.
Yeah, it's one of the bullet points listed, so I was anticipating.
Oh, it's already there.
Yep,
Okay.
it's already there.
I don't know. Yeah, there's no question there, Peter. You're already on the agenda. So
I see Tasha
Tasha,
has her hand raised.
I was just waiting for you to respond.
Oh,
Tasha.
I'm sorry. Yep. Well, good.
Yeah, I think this is a good discussion that we need to have. All the research I've been doing about pretrial releases and all the other metrics of how to measure something adequately or effectively, talk about what is the definition of recidivism, because to measure it, you have to define it. So I think that's great. And if you could send it out in advance so that we can just I don't know if you're listing like where you pulled these definitions from or how you came up with these conclusions. Just that would be great to have that in advance, to have a really good discussion about it. I think that would be great.
Jill, would you remind me to get it in the packet I need to get something to you?
First thing Monday morning. I'll send the packet out Monday morning.
Right. That's right, because it's the next Monday, the following Monday.
Correct.
That our meeting. Okay. Okay, great.
Yes.
I can do that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. The only other outstanding question it looks like on here is discussion of the enabling statutes for the Task Force on Law and Justice Council. My suggestion on this, and I'm going to put my 2 cents in a little bit, is to wait and have this conversation in February when we have our new members. We're going to have at least, I'm hoping we'll have we'll at least have one new member. Deborah Hawley is terming out. And we might have 2 new members. So
that's a good idea, Joe, because I think we still need to figure out how to frame that conversation and what we're expecting to get out of it, I guess, would be important. So I'll work with you to work on that.
Okay. Is that okay with you, Peter and Heather, as the task force co-chairs? Do we do that in February?
I see not.
Thank you.
All right, that kind of wraps us on the next task force and a little bit on February's. So anything under other business? Peter, you said you had something, or was that your
I've already addressed it.
I thought you had, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So any other business? Holly.
Yeah. Just wondering, as Marty and I are working on drafting the action plan for 2026, and wondering if the steering committee has specific things that they would like to add to that. And we have, I know I don't want to spring this on you, but you've been talking about a lot of really important things at this meeting. So are the things, hopes that you have for the coming year as a steering committee? Things you'd like to achieve?
For me, I'd like to think about that question a little bit. Peter, is your hand up? Oh, okay.
Okay. Well, we have a little time. We're not going to have the draft of the action plan actually until January because the timing just is not working out this year with trying to get all the committee input. So I think if maybe we can just add that to the next steering committee agenda, if you guys like, and think a little bit about it. Awesome. Great.
Any other business?
I think that might affect that last bullet on the agenda for the IPRTF meeting. Is there more we want to say or do about action planning on the 15th? Jill,
Are you speaking to this, Peter, or is this a different subject? No.
Different subject. Marty, could you repeat your question?
Yeah, I'm
didn't quite
looking
hear.
at the list of items for the December 15th agenda, and the last one is review IPRTF priorities, goals, and action plan updates. Do you want to do a go around there and ask people, what progress have you made on your current action plans, or do we need this item because we won't be talking about the 2026 action plan until January?
Well, I know that I got a call from Brian and Dan, and we had a really good talk about their action plan. They sent me some material, so I know that they're thinking about it, working on it. Not so sure about legal injustice, so I can't speak to that, but I know people are moving forward. Bertie, how are things going for you?
You're
Bertie,
muted.
you're muted.
We have index committee this afternoon, and that's my main agenda item is I'm going to ask each person for their priorities for next year. And so I will have something to report and we can go from there.
And J-pop, how's J-pop looking? I'm sure you've got that well in hand.
We're in process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nodding her head. So,
But
Brian,
our next meeting is after the task force meeting.
yeah. Brian?
Just wondering in terms of 2026 actions, either by steering, task force, or even J-pop, is any of these groups going to weigh in on the size of the jail facility or size of the behavioral care center in terms of beds?
I'd like to speak to that, if I could.
Go ahead, Peter.
I've been having a lot of conversations with a variety of people about that very issue. I do not think that we have all the information. I mean, we're in this process where we're trying to trying to figure that out, and I know that more work is being done by our design build team to make sure that we're meeting our responsibilities, and I look forward to those informed conversations. At this point, I'm not entirely sure that there is enough meat on the table to have those conversations. And I guess I would ask Sat Paul if you have, and you're closer to the process than even I am, or Barry. I think it's a good one. It's certainly top of mind for all sorts of folks in the community, and I do want IPRTF to weigh in and have good conversations about it. So I thank you for bringing it up, Brian, and just wonder if anybody else has any thoughts.
Scott Paul, do you have thoughts? You kind of were cued there.
I think rightly so, Peter. It's been a little bit back and forth on at the last finance advisory board. We discussed that, and we have given some instructions as to what we expect with the money. I think that's has been a bigger question. The money has been floated like $1,000 a square foot, which is very expensive. We think that $800 a square foot was expensive, right? And that is going to impact us, all what features, what other things we can have, what we cannot have. And we have pushed back strongly on that number that gave us more justification, or it is just an estimate. So what we have heard is this is not the final number. This is one of their estimate if they can get everything of what they desire or what they have experienced in different places in the United States. And they built county jails for $1 billion. I said, well, we are not there. So I think that what is causing a little bit delay, and of course holidays, and what we expect is mid-January to have a little more information on what we have given clear instructions based on what this body has given, and what Hannah made a presentation to the finance board, and that's where design build and STV were there, and those are our instructions. That's what our expectations are, and that's what we want. So I do not have a good answer to your question right at this moment, but yeah, so we have to wait till mid-January sometime.
Thanks, Paul. Bertie.
Yeah, I agree that it's premature at this point. It is the most common question I get hammered with whenever I am out in the community. And so I think it would be helpful if those of us on the IPRTF at least knew a couple of things. One is that the decision before it is cast in stone will come back to the committee for our input. And the other is if there is any possibility of a timeline around that. But at this point, as a member of the IPRTF, I can't honestly say there will be a process for input because I'm not aware of any. And it may be in other people's minds assumed, but I think it would help those of us who are representing the process to the public to be able to have some idea of what the process will be prior to the decision. So that would be my request, that it be the process be established, that the IPRTF will have an opportunity to, in an informed way, weigh in on this really critical issue.
Tasha.
Muted.
Yeah, sorry. The Paul, you mentioned a presentation by Hannah, and I'm not sure what you're referring to. So that, at least the way I interpreted what you said, was that it kind of helped inform something. So I was just wondering what presentation that is, if Jill can, or what meeting I can find it in. I found the presentation, or at least the draft from STV on their 86-page PowerPoint one on how they came up with the number they came in for 2050 projections. And so if there's something separate that Hannah did, I would like to just to review that so that I'm looking from the same page that you are looking for from.
That is true. That the 2050 numbers, that is old or is dated now. There has been updates on that by STV. It should be on the website. I have not checked it myself, but I can check that. But Hannah made a presentation to this body about when we discussed the location.
Oh, okay.
And what are the features that we expect to be, and that the same presentation was given to the finance board, and same information was passed on to the design build team. That's what I mean.
Okay.
All right, that brings us to public comment. Jill?
Yeah, just a couple of things right quick. Barry, I have emailed to you some budget adjustments for Crossroads that need your approval. If you could take a look at that, that would be helpful.
I will do
And
that.
Bertie, if you have a few minutes after this meeting to do a check-in with me before index committee, that would be great. And see, Peter, do you have anyone in the conference room with you? I don't see anyone with you.
Nope.
Okay.
I'm all alone.
We have one attendee, Dean, if you would like to speak to the steering committee, and he does. Let me get you. There you go, Dean. Go ahead.
Yes, I paying attention to the discussion about the land acknowledgement, and then the fact that in that discussion, the racial disparities within the jail surfaced as a conversation. I think I want to endorse Dan Hamill's notion that those issues of racial disparity ought to not just be put off to once a year conversations or the indigenous population interests that we have, but actually at every task force meeting, it seems to me that the fact of those racial disparities should be discussed, and we be looking at what can we do about that, because they are significant. If you haven't seen the data developed by the Racial Equity Commission, I encourage you to look at it. I have a sense that we're on a collision course here in this process of planning for a jail between having beds enough that satisfy the demand for no booking restrictions, and on the other hand, having quality therapeutic environments within the jail. And the only way I think to address that is to really start looking much more seriously at what goes on in the early intercepts on the sequential intercept model, pre-booking, particularly as Stark has talked about. So I just would encourage us to sort of ramp up the attention to the flow of folks into the process of being arrested, and even once booked into jail, how long it takes to get folks through a process and be considered for things like the mental health court and so on. So I just think there's a lot of work to do on the front end so that we don't have an overbuild of a jail to assure us that there are no booking restrictions. Thanks.
Thanks, Dean. Okay, final words, Paul.
I have one word. I'm sorry, Bertie asked a question which is very significant and important, that somehow the members of this steering committee or IPRTF bigger committee are not confident that they will be part of the final decision making. I forgot to address that. I think that there are three people right on this meeting: Barry, and Peter and Heather. They are all three members of the finance board. And Mayor is not here today. I think Mayor is part of the steering committee, and she is also on that board. So rest assured, there is no other pathway without RPRTF. I should just specify that. Now, if you're looking for a proper process procedure, I think it is somewhere buried in. I can't point out to look at item number 9.78 and that what it says, but I just want to reassure all the members present today and all the members of IPRTF that the decisions on the behavioral care center will be coming to this body. And now we may not get everything everybody wants. That's fact of life. But at no way that decision will be made without bringing to this body and incorporating what the wishes of this body are. So rest assured, we don't have a separate pathway of decision making. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Bertie, you're the last word.
Okay, I just want to thank you for that. And one small suggestion, we do get Finance Committee brief updates at the IPRTF, but since that is where at this point we have the most input, perhaps we could ask those doing the update to include just a couple sentence update on the status of the discussion. You know, even learning that we're back to re-looking at the proposed budget is really helpful for folks like me who are trying to answer community questions. So
one more thing, the meeting of Finance Facility Advisory Board is Open Public Meetings Act, and its schedule is there. If you're not informed, I think it's somehow the schedule is set, and I think Peter and Heather, if you guys can share with this when the schedule comes out, and if anybody is so interested and have time, you are most welcome to watch the proceedings of that body as well. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thanks, Paul. All right, everybody, good meeting. We shall see you all on the task force meeting on the 15th. We're adjourned.